think that it is a good idea for our council to at least be made aware of bills as they're proposed and pending, and for us to be discussing it. And
sure.
I think that there is an opportunity for us to weigh in. I don't know that it's any one of us individually taking a particular position, as much as we as your council are recommending the following position on this pending bill.
Yeah. And I think honestly, if you ask the commissioner of DHR and the governor, would you be interested in our input, you know, on this bill, they would probably both say yes. I don't know why they would say no. I don't want to hear what the GWDC thinks about this bill that affects diversity.
Well,
I can't imagine either one.
It's the charge of the council to do that, to advise.
Exactly. Yep.
So, board, do you have any particular pieces of legislation in mind that you think are coming down the pike, or?
I cannot say yet.
Okay.
But I do believe that there is some coming up that I think would be definitely in the realm of being more equity and diversity focused and fair, particularly to persons of color. And so certainly I think that I would really love to see this council give the advice that would be in support of those bills. And when we know what the language is and what the bill is, then I would certainly come here and share that with you so that we could discuss it and share whether we want to advise.
I think that sounds great. I think logistically, because as somebody said, the bills come fast and furious, and the activities, and our council, at least last year's schedule, was meeting quarterly and then having subcommittees meeting more frequently. That's why I had thought that maybe we were talking about a new subcommittee, but it sounds like not necessarily. And I think that if there's a way for council members to just keep each other and the rest of us all in the loop as things like, just send a link to a bill if you become aware of it and say this, I think this might be of interest to the council.
Yeah.
And we can see how soon thereafter we're going to be having a council meeting, or whether we need to communicate just via emails and stuff like that. I would just ask that people be really careful and discreet about anything that we're putting in writing and committing to, because we don't want to cause anybody any embarrassment, including ourselves.
I know there will be probably 4 or 5 coming from us alone to include the constitutional amendment. So there's going to be a lot of activity.
That's great. That's great to hear. So, are there others? As far as things that we haven't yet identified or talked about for things that we want to tackle in 2019?
I just wonder if we want to revisit quarterly meetings. It just feels like there's a whole lot going on, and
so I think that we're now segueing into our business portion of the meeting, which is all of the things that we usually discuss. How often we want to meet, where we are going to meet, where and when, how often, and then also electing chairs or co-chairs or whatever. So I agree with you, Diane, that for me, quarterly meetings is too far apart for us to meet as a group, and we lose a certain amount of continuity. And particularly if we don't, I think the whole premise was that it would make it easier because we were lacking consistency and having everybody attending the meetings when we were holding them more often. But we lack the consistency even if we only hold them quarterly. So I would want us to consider maybe going back to every other month, but
I think every other month and maybe skipping the summer.
Yep.
So we do 5 meetings a year.
I think that would make sense. And then there's nothing to say that the subcommittees can decide when and on what meeting schedule they want to meet. And some of that may be driven by some of the focus of their activity at certain times of the year.
Well, you could say that the subcommittees could meet
on the opposite.
The off month.
Yeah. So do we put that to vote? I'm saying do we put it to vote in, but I'm recognizing that technically, I think we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us, 6 of us that are actually voting members at the table, but I think that's still a quorum, maybe, possibly.
And I don't know how many total members we have right now.
I think who we're missing at today's meeting, so Dana, who just wrote to us and said she was sorry she couldn't come. We're missing Ruben Jennings, and I know I'm forgetting somebody.
Casey?
Who?
Aditi?
Well, no,
Or is she
she's
a mom?
actually ad hoc.
Oh.
Is Casey?
Oh, Casey, thank you. Casey's from the AG's office. So if we're only missing 3, then maybe 6 is a quorum.
Sounds like it.
I said with great confidence. So should we go ahead and vote on is there any discussion on the frequency of the meetings, pros, cons? What do you think?
I think every other month is great. I'm just trying to think about which months that would be, and if we skip the summer. So if we certainly leave out July and August.
We could do February, April, and June. And then we could do September and November. Possibly have still an annual retreat in December. Is that too many?
Sure, let's give that a try. I like it. February, April, June, September and November, and then maybe a retreat in December. Okay, okay. And let's just go, if we can, like, pick a date and days and times right now, that'd be great. Can we do that? And then we can just vote on a whole yearly schedule?
We had been doing Mondays, well, we were alternating Mondays and Tuesdays. That was part of the problem for you, Joe, right?
Right, Mondays are my only bad day, really.
Yeah, so I think that we were doing, half the times we were meeting was good for you.
Yeah.
The other half wasn't. But is there a particular day, first of all, does CAPS work for people, or are there groups or folks that want to advocate for alternating with Waterbury, or? I think right now we happen to have the majority of members that are located here in Montpelier, but I know that doesn't help you guys.
Oh, but it's
a
20
fun,
minutes.
yeah.
Okay.
Short show.
I know that CAPS works in terms of usually for availability of meeting space and parking.
Parking was tough today.
Yeah.
I know, it depends on who's in here for training,
Yeah.
so.
That's what, Tuesdays and Thursdays are SSG, so those are
Okay.
big days for CAPS
Oh.
for training.
There's another activity happening this morning too, the women's something, Carrie, you should probably know.
Yeah, a meeting about the 2020, the centennial of women's suffrage.
Yeah, they
Yep.
didn't end until 12.
Well,
So is Wednesday a better day? Is that a regular Tuesday, Thursday for supervising state government? Is that a regular?
At least through this month, I don't know what their
I
schedule
think
is
it
like in
changes because I'm
January,
about
but
to
yeah.
take it and it's Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
all right, so,
okay,
But I don't think we should choose our day around
Right.
CAPS parking. I think we should do it based on,
Okay.
you know.
There's
what's-
other
true.
parking.
Yeah.
There is other
Yeah,
parking, there's
there
parking
is.
over there too, and.
so Tuesdays, 2 to 4? Just for the sake of consistency?
And
That's
frequency,
all.
like first Tuesday, second Tuesday?
Yeah.
third Tuesday?
Yeah,
What do you
so
think?
third Tuesday doesn't work for me because I got a classification committee, but the other 3 Tuesdays I can do. Does Tuesday afternoon work for most of us?
Mhm.
And 2 to 4 works.
Mhm.
So did we want to go with maybe the 4th Tuesday of the month? Or the 1st or 2nd? I just realized we're not meeting until February, so maybe
Yeah.
the 1st
The
Tuesday?
first tends to be bad because so much stuff happens at the beginning of the month.
The 2nd Tuesday of the month, going once, going twice. 2nd Tuesday, 2 to 4, CAPS be there, be square.
Okay.
And I'll reserve the rooms and send out the invites, and if I notice that we don't have many people coming, we can always try to find another alternate day.
Okay. So
Okay.
2nd Tuesday,
Thank you.
Sure.
of February, April,
Feel free to
June,
harass people with design.
September. I like Tuesdays better, besides the fact that we don't have to worry about losing Joe, is that frequently we got holidays on Mondays.
Yeah.
Or if not frequently, then sometimes, so. Do we need to vote ayes and stuff, or like,
I don't think so.
okay.
I don't think we.
All against? Nobody, great. So, and we're gonna continue with the same committee structure, so that's gonna
Yep.
work.
Yep.
And those committee groups will be deciding their scheduling and their,
And within the next month, we should have an updated website with all of our information and our minutes, and I'll
Great.
post agendas there when I can, so I just have to be trained on how not to run the website first. Which is necessary for me. Just pictures of my dog.
I know, yes.
Excellent. So
So,
hopefully that will help too with providing information to other people who want to come too, so.
so now comes the favoriteest part of the meeting for everybody. And it's the election of, first it's the nomination
Yeah.
of co-chairs, and then it's the campaign speeches, and
Campaign
the
speeches.
wheeling and dealing.
And the passing out of candy and the kissing of
Right.
babies.
And then the actual election by Australian ballot. No, so,
See you later.
so I always like to, from my own perspective, throw it open to folks who haven't previously had a chance or exercise.
I nominate Mark.
Yeah.
Wait for him to leave the room. Stage right. Whoever is nominated, good luck.
Thank you, Mark. Very, very, very welcome. Your presence and participation was extremely welcome today.
Thank you so much, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm guessing also that, are we limited to the
Yes.
chairs have to be members of the
believe so.
council?
Yeah.
Oh, those
And I
crazy
think
rules.
And I think we've like lost
Did we lose a
another
quorum?
voting member,
He
so,
just did.
Unless a couple.
Oh.
yeah.
There goes the quorum.
But is there a reason, I guess what I'd be interested in hearing is if the
Oh, Diane
current,
ran away? Did she leave or did she just leave?
Well, I think Diane stepped out,
Left.
so yes,
think-
welcome another
left-
vote.
I think she's gone, yeah.
Then we better vote fast. So who's left who can be, so we've got Karen, and we've got Carrie, and there's me,
Joe,
and
Can we do it?
Joe.
we've got Joe, we've got,
Not, you're not a member?
I'm not.
Oh.
no. So Rachel, and I don't know.
I just like to
You're the
show up and
commissioners
say a
next
lot.
to me, so I'm sure that.
I'd have to look at I brought the
Well,
executive order.
I don't think, I think we would want it to be a broader audience anyway, but I'd be interested, is there any reason that our co-chairs don't want to continue, or?
I would be perfectly willing to continue. It's really challenging for me to find the time to do it. Just honestly, I don't feel like I've been the greatest co-chair.
Thank you so much for.
Thank you, Laura. I wonder if we put out an email to everybody saying,
Is
asking
everyone
for
interested?
nominations,
Yeah.
yeah, and then
That's
vote at our
good.
next
Do it in
meeting.
February or something.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a
Oh,
good
we can
idea.
easily
Yeah.
do that. That
Yeah.
makes total sense. If you're comfortable, Rachel, with
Sure.
having, I mean, it's not like we'll ditch you between now and then. We'll continue, I don't know, there are usually, rarely are there co-chair emergencies. Like, the bad side of the
Just-
sky, like.
Just
get
put a
the-
message that says, if this is an emergency, please hang up and dial 911.
So I think I like that. Maybe, I don't know if you're planning to create notes, meeting minutes,
Yes,
whatever.
absolutely.
And share it with the whole committee,
Mhm.
and that way we can have it as an agenda item for the February
Sure.
meeting to
Yeah.
have an election.
Yeah. Do we want written nominations in the meantime, or?
I was just gonna ask the same question, we should be soliciting nominations from
I mean, we could have them
members.
kind of
Sure.
ready to go.
I think
Yeah.
that would probably help.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
fine.
think so
Yeah.
too.
Engagement,
All
yeah.
right.
I mean, I'm also curious for those members who are here, Joe, and Karen, whether either one of you is eager or interested in.
Not particularly.
I don't know, Bernie, does that, I'd be happy as sort of a civic you know, contribution, but I'm thrilled with the leadership we have. And,
Oh, shucks.
you know,
Well, thanks. Did you already serve once, or no? Nothing.
yeah, I'm still kind of a newbie, so that's
Okay,
Yeah.
2 years in.
okay.
But you also sit on this council representing a population that's important to remember as we're,
Mhm.
Right. As
obviously,
things
it's
keep-
something that can be pushed a little bit to the side if the focus is strictly on racial diversity.
Right.
So it's important, I think, Joe, that you are on this committee to
Right.
represent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
agree with
yeah,
that.
I absolutely am thrilled and continue to
Yeah,
want
it's
to.
important, it's an important
Yes,
point to have on the
yes.
table,
Thank you for saying that.
for
yeah.
sure.
Agreed. Okay, so what else do we have? We've run out of
I think we may
Action
be
steps.
done, actually.
action steps.
I
No
think we
action.
identified the things that we're gonna be doing in 2019, so we have that information, and we set a meeting schedule, and we made a decision about the chair election process.
And it all happened before 4 o'clock.
Pretty
Really?
good.
I
Yeah.
know. Circle this day.
Drive home in
Well-
the daylight.
Well, thank you all
Thanks, everybody.
for coming and participating, and I'm looking forward to the council doing all kinds of good things in 2019.
This
Seems
feels
like-
like an important year coming up. I think with
Yeah.
everything going on,
Yeah.
with the new person coming on board, I think it's an
Yeah.
important year for this committee. So,
Agreed.
excited.
And too.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank
So
you.
Curtis, you're the one who I think gets the award for coming from the furthest away.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so take some snacks on your way home. Because
Survival.
Aaron, I'll just shoot.
our
you
estimate
a
is
separate
15
email just so we're
people, and
connected,
there's a lot of
as soon as we
food
get the
there.
meeting
Okay,
scheduled.
sure.
Just
I
wanted to
think you
share
did
that.
good though.
call the meeting to order. We have name tags. I don't think we need introductions tonight, do we? No? Good. All right. So do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? We'll add, we can add under new business a response to some correspondence that we have from the Newfane Select Board. Okay, and that's it. Members of the public, anybody who's here to speak to something that's not actually on the agenda, if you want to speak now, it's your shot. Otherwise, you can speak under the portion of the agenda that's relevant to your comments. Anyone? Okay, so we have correspondence from the Newfane Select Board inviting the board to attend a meeting to open lines of communication. I believe this went to all the board members, as well as it's also addressed to the Newbrook Elementary Board. And we probably just, under new business, we can formulate a response to this, whether we're going to attend, we can figure out what we're going to do with it. We also were just handed correspondence, and, I'll have this posted on the website for everybody. We were also just handed a letter from Susan Jones having to do with reinforcing the value of family consumer science classes. There are some articles, research attached from, looks like, talking about financial literacy in high school. Looks like it's a study done by Champlain College. We also have a newspaper article from the Brattleboro Reformer back in February of 2018, talking about some students having better life skills than others. It's a pretty good sized article. I have not had a chance to read it because I was just handed it, but I'll give this to anybody. It talks about the things that you would learn in a senior survival mini class. I apologize, I'm probably shortchanging this long article. But that's here for anybody. I'm not sure how we'll get that on the website, but we'll figure something out. Scans or a link or something. Does anybody have questions regarding any of these things? Board members, community members? Anybody want to see a copy?
Sure, I have a couple other questions, I guess.
Sure.
In regards to the budget, it seems like teacher positions are always the ones being cut. And I'm kind of wondering why that is, and I understand my position, and I referenced that in my letter that I gave you tonight with my low enrollment. However, what Bob Tebow didn't mention last time, and I mentioned this in the letter, is that yes, my class size is reduced to 7 students. 7 students roughly for the past year in high school family and consumer science, but what Bob didn't mention is that because of my contract, I teach wellness 1 block, I teach middle school 1 block, so that leaves 1 high school block for me to teach high school family and consumer science classes. So yes, 7 doesn't look like a lot, but it's only 1 block as opposed to a, other department teacher that teaches 3 blocks of their department in a day. So that's one point I wanted to make. And not knocking any individuals, but why do we, if we have reduced enrollment, why do we need 2 administrators? Instead of cutting teacher positions, maybe reduce some administrators. And my third point is, with 1 teacher retiring, he just made that public today, most likely he is at a fairly high salary level. So in hiring these two new 6th grade teachers that we need to hire, potentially his high salary could equal like 1.5 of those 2 new positions that we need. And I'm not sure how that's worked into the proposed budget. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody questions, comments? We get an update on the state of the middle school transition from Mike Harrigan tonight. Mike?
Stand over here.
Wherever you're comfortable.
Camera like here.
Yes, M like you over there so she can film you.
So we've been hosting a series of meetings with current 5th grade parents, so 6th grade parents for next school year. At the first meeting, we really determined what the purpose of our meetings was going to be, and we selected several topics that we would cover in a given meeting. So our first topic-focused meeting was last week. We actually focused on a one-time 6th grade class trip that we would do because as 5th graders, they don't have a 5th grade class trip this year. And some interesting things came out of that meeting, and this will help give the 6th grade teachers next year a frame of reference as to what the community values in a 6th grade class trip. On this handout here, for the purpose, there really were 4 main reasons for a class trip that developed as themes. The first one was bonding amongst the students on the trip. Having some sort of challenge that they overcome was important. There's something for everyone. So, students who are musically inclined have the opportunity to do something like that. Students who like sports get to do that. And then, most importantly, was student ownership, so helping to fund the trip. So students have, the term was some skin in the game that came up from multiple parents at our last meeting. So using that as a frame of reference when we get, the 6th grade teachers for next school year, they can kind of hit the ground running with why we have a class trip. We talked about who, and aside from school staff, any parent or guardian who passes a background check and is able to pay for the trip will be able to go. We're still looking at the same time frame, so May or June of 2020. And it did come up where we would actually go because Newbrook does Montreal, and then Townsend kind of varies, and Jamaica tends to do Nature's Classroom. Because this is a unique situation, the community and the parents who attended were open to doing a unique trip. So not necessarily adopting something that already exists, but planning something that aligns with those 4 themes of bonding, overcoming challenges, something for everyone, and student ownership, so doing something new. And then we devote a lot of time to how to actually fund this trip and how to fundraise for it, because we don't want to step on the toes. We're not sure what the elementary schools are going to do, but we would think they might be doing like a 5th grade class trip moving forward. So next year, we wouldn't want to be like competing, doing similar things as the 5th grade fundraising. So trying to think outside the box of some things that we could do. The other topics we're going to cover are down at the bottom. We're going to do one next Monday, talking about physical activity at the 6th grade level. Other topics that we're going to get into over the course of the next few months: social emotional supports, extracurriculars, academics and supports. And then one of the themes that came up in our initial meeting was to over-communicate. So maybe doing some things differently with Moving On Update and 6th grade middle school information night. So that's kind of where we're at. And we've stacked these meetings before West River board meetings. So they're at 5:30. So that's why we'll meet next Monday at 5:30. And then we just piggyback right into these at 7 o'clock. So that's kind of where we're at. Questions?
Thank you. Anybody?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the percentage of parents for the kids that are coming up, showing up to the meetings?
We had 12 the first night, and the second one we had 7. It was the snow night. So, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And we meet tomorrow as leadership team anyway, so they'll be sending those flyers home with the parents tomorrow, so they'll be notified, about a week ahead of the event.
Yep.
So.
Can you just shoot a copy of that to us?
Yep.
So that we can, you just email it to me and I'll send it to everybody.
Absolutely. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Okay, next on the agenda is a leave of absence request. We have a letter that Bob gave me from Stephanie Nizio asking for an extended leave for the 2019-20 school year to focus on her artistic vision and involvement with environmental issues. Typically she references the section of the master agreement where this is actually allowed. Typically, we just, we'll ask for a recommendation from Bob and see what he says. Bob?
Yes.
Thank you. That was succinct.
I mean, it's interesting, this will be the first one that comes to this board because it's for next year,
Yeah.
not the Leland and Gray board, but I'm a strong believer in that folks need the opportunity to kind of, recharge the batteries and do that. It's a win-win because it puts them in a position to come back stronger, and it's not at any additional cost to the board, community.
Yeah, there's no budgetary, the only budgetary impact is if the replacement is at a lower salary than hers.
Yeah.
We're high.
Right.
Okay, so, go ahead.
I know there's some segments of curriculum where we have a tough time filling positions. Is that true of art, or do we think we're okay with?
I'm trying to think. In my years, I've replaced a couple of art teachers in previous schools, and the pool was decent.
Okay.
I mean, since it's only a one-year position, that will hurt the pool a little bit rather than a permanent position. But I suspect that we'll be able to find someone. I'm not super worried about that. But you're right, there are some areas that are tough to fill. Math, some languages, special ed.
Okay.
But I think art should be okay, I think.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Okay, so we just would need a motion to approve that leave of absence.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Emily moved, Al seconded. All right, all in favor of approving the leave of absence for the 2019-2020 school year for Stephanie Nazio, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, motion carries. Okay. So, did anyone not get the Newfane Select Board letter emailed to them, or not see it on the board? Okay, so the Newfane Select Board has invited us to a meeting to open lines of communication between the boards. The letter does not talk about what they want to discuss or what communication they want to have with us. So, I did return the email acknowledging receipt of the letter and say that it would be added to tonight's agenda for a response, but beyond that, I didn't want to respond because I can't, we didn't speak for the board. So, I guess I would kind of like to know what what they want to talk about before someone just shows up at a meeting. And, we have the additional problem of, if I were to go to the meeting, or if we were to have a delegation to go to the meeting, again, we really don't speak for the board unless we're at a meeting. So we would just be sort of gathering information and not really doing much. I guess I'm in favor of sort of responding in writing and saying, asking them sort of what they want to talk about, where do they want to have communication, and the easier way would be to have one of their members come here with the questions so that we could, in our meeting, answer as a board rather than try and, go back and forth. But I would love to hear from the rest of you. Yeah, Drew.
Are there any of those board members in the room by any chance?
No.
Okay.
Good try.
Just a thought.
Yeah, I looked, I was like, Mike.
I watched their most recent meeting where they talked about that, and so it was definitely part about the solar field, and then it was also part about when the transfer of the property happens, if they're gonna still be maintaining, like plowing the driveways and stuff. So they had a concern that, my impression of it was they had a concern that some of the transfer had already happened, and so they were wondering if they should still even be plowing for this year. So that was what I got from that.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think that would be great to get them to tell us what they want.
Yeah, rather than
I would encourage
sort
them to send someone to us if that, we've got so many meetings already.
Maybe they can come to us on the 17th instead of us going to them.
Well, their meeting is the 17th as well.
Well, I know, but.
We could ask, although I actually am not sure we need to meet on the 17th based on the information I have about the budget. We may actually be able to there would be nothing new at that meeting. Everything we can know tonight, and then in that week between now and then, we're not gonna learn any new information. So we might actually be better served to just not meet and in January know it all.
Technical question.
Sure.
And probably not the most intelligent one, but if the whole board goes to a meeting, we have to warn it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was just curious.
This letter also went to Newbrook Board, so.
So we would have to warn that.
It's the, there's two boards that they're approaching right now on this, so.
Ken, I know you're the chair of the Newbrook Board. You got
So you
what's
want- I don't
your
know if you have a
response on
meeting.
this? Do you know yet? Has your
My
board decided?
response on this is, I happen to be in the office today for other matters, but my understanding was that we were having a meeting that night at 7, they were gonna try to hurry their meeting up and come here on the 17th, would be a possibility. Now, now we're saying we're not gonna have a meeting.
Well, we can decide. We can send a letter back to them and say we may not meet, that we're, and let them know what we're gonna do, and then also ask them, to come to a meeting with the questions, and we'll be happy to answer them. I mean, I'm willing to do whatever the board directs me to do to respond to this request.
I think that's fine, that you send them a letter.
Okay.
Stating, it'd probably be better for them to come meet with the board and direct the questions to the board.
Is it prudent to warn just in case a bunch of us get to go? Or is that, I don't know what the percentage needs to be to make sure that we're all, I think open communication is great. I understand the number of meetings that we've been doing.
I mean, the properties are pretty well, once the vote happened, we merged. You know what I mean? It's not, the official start date of the board doesn't matter, but everything that was in all the articles as far as all assets and properties will go to the new district. And that's an interesting question, though. I didn't hear that one about the plowing, but that's.
Well, that can be addressed.
Yeah, and that would be probably as of the start of this board running things, it would be, but we can address that with them. All right, so I'll send a written response and just ask them to clarify what their questions are. And invite them to come here, and the board would be happy to answer the questions and see what
And
they
if
say.
they can't come to send the questions to us in writing, if they are unable to.
Yeah, and we can
to our
certainly
meeting.
answer in writing.
It'd be nice to know exactly what.
Okay, I'll get that done. I'll get that response out tomorrow, and I'll copy the board on it, so you'll see it.
And you can tell them when our next meeting is, whether it's the 17th.
And I'll let them know when our next meeting is. If we do hold the meeting on the 17th, and if we don't, we'll tell them it's in January. Anything else on that? All right. So, the building committee report. Who wants to do that?
Sure.
Do we have a chair?
Yeah, you.
Oh. I was afraid that was, I was like, I think I am, but maybe I can get out of this. You want to do it? I'm happy to do it.
Go ahead.
All right,
You're
so
fine.
the building committee met, we pulled in an engineer who's worked with some of our buildings and some of the plans on our buildings. We borrowed Ed, who has been in Leland and Gray for a long, long time. We also had Bob and Lori and Bill. And so we're looking at this, the line item in the budget, without looking at it, is $700,000 for maintenance that each board has pushed off in the last few years to bring us to where we probably ought to be, based on these engineering reports that we commissioned when we took over, when this board knew that it was going to be taking over managing those 4 buildings.